We come to our final session before lunch. I'm sure some of you are very pleased to hear that, but actually, seriously, this is going to be a very interesting fireside chat here, an intimate conversation with Paul Dawalibi, the CEO of Innovation City, based in Ras Al Khaimah. So, money is moving faster across borders, platforms, and asset classes. And this next conversation with Paul will explore how innovation hubs are shaping the future of financial infrastructure. And joining Paul on stage will be our wonderful presenter, Viwe Kunene. Please welcome them onto the stage. Thank you.
A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all so much for joining us for this discussion for this afternoon right before lunch. We promise to make it fun and hopefully engaging. Thank you so much, Paul, for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here. Although I have a bit of an issue with the intro. Usually people mention that I'm the best-looking man in technology and finance. I mean, someone's going to get fired for this.
Well, I'm glad you've said it yourself.
I didn't say it. I said usually other people say it.
Of course. Right, Paul, let's get right into it. Now, the way money travels across the world is changing faster than we realize, becoming more digital, more instant, and sometimes invisible. At the center of that is the transformation that is innovation ecosystems that are enabling fintech and digital assets to scale. So now, talk to us about what fundamental shifts in global financial rails is most underestimated today.
Hey, look, I think there's an easy answer here. There's kind of a boring answer here to say, stable coins is changing how money moves across nations, even within nations. But I think that's kind of the answer everyone expects and not that interesting. Fundamentally, when I think about infrastructure and financial infrastructure, everyone thinks about the technology, the regulatory environment, the products. What almost everyone ignores is the human infrastructure, the people doing the transacting. And I think a big shift that's happening now, and what's driving a lot of the technological shift, is the people in the equation, in that infrastructure equation, now have grown up with a lot of these concepts, with the idea of digital assets, with the idea of digital money, the idea of moving money with stable coins, moving money in a decentralized way. That human infrastructure, that behavior change, that mentality change, that psychological change, I think is what's having by far the bigger impact. Because 20 years ago, if you asked me this question, I would have said, it's not really changing. Banks work just fine for my grandmother. Because it does. It does everything she needs to do. She can move money where she wants. She can pay her bills however she wants. She doesn't need any next generation infrastructure. But my grandmother's generation's dead. And so a lot of the human people, a lot of the human capital, a lot of the human infrastructure now in the middle of it has grown up with it, and this is why we're seeing, I think, this explosion in adoption, explosion in a willingness to try and test and experiment. It's because there's a generation that's comfortable with it. So the human infrastructure, I think, is the bigger transformation than the technology infrastructure.
Right, that gives us a helpful micro lens into infrastructure shifts, which brings me to my next question. What differentiates a hub that genuinely accelerates fintech and digital assets innovation from one that simply hosts it?
Yeah, this is a great question, and obviously as someone who manages, runs a global innovation hub in Ras Al Khaimah, this is very near and dear to my heart. I think most people underestimate how much the free zones have been responsible for building the economy of the UAE. People think it's tourism that built it. Free zones were the economic engines, are the economic engines. They bring investors, they bring capital, they bring people, they bring ideas, they bring business. They're the engines, they're the hubs. I think for far too long, these hubs, all they've provided is a license to do business, a visa, and a desk you can sit at. To me, that's not how you build a successful innovation hub. That's not how you support the success of great fintech companies or great digital asset companies. I think there's a few components that you need to get right if you want to become the next Silicon Valley. One is You have to understand your client, and you have to understand what is their biggest pain point. Just selling you a license to do business means nothing. What is your pain point as a Web3 company? What is your pain point as a crypto company? A lot of times, it's regulatory clarity. And it's regulatory clarity without regulation that crushes you. I think some of the challenges, even in the UAE, is the regulatory environment has become increasingly onerous. As much great as ADGM, VARA have done to bring the community here and support them and give them a clear regulatory environment, I think we may be at a point where the regulation has gone too far. How can we let these people operate and build their companies and build their businesses and give them license to operate in a way that accelerates them, doesn't stop them? So I think that regulatory clarity, but the balance is the tricky part when you're building an innovation hub. The second thing I talk about is, and I always tell a story about a Starbucks in Silicon Valley. So it's the Starbucks on Sand Hill Road. And Sand Hill Road is the main thoroughfare in Silicon Valley. It's where all the big VCs are, Sequoia, Benchmark, Matrix. But on this road, there's one Starbucks. And enterprising founders know if you go knock on the door of Sequoia, they're not going to take your meeting. Right? You go pitch them, they don't know who you are. You're not going to raise any money from them. Enterprising founders know that you park yourself in that Starbucks because eventually the partners from each one of those firms is going to pass through there and get their coffee that day. That's your opportunity to pitch them, to tell them how you're going to change the world, to raise money. Now, it's a silly story. Usually I have the picture of the Starbucks on the wall. That Starbucks, I raised money for 2 startups from that Starbucks. So it's real for me.
Right.
And so I coined this term called density of intensity. And to me, that's the magic of Silicon Valley that no one has been able to capture in this region yet. I think we're doing it. I think if I'm going to bet on anyone, I'm going to bet on myself. But this density and this idea of putting enough really smart, brilliant, ambitious people all working in the same sector, all in the same physical place, great things tend to happen. The challenge with even the ecosystems in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi today is they're relatively fragmented. You have fintech companies at DIFC and DMCC and Meydan and Silicon Oasis and here at ADGM and Abu Dhabi. It's highly fragmented. You don't have the density that captures that magic of Silicon Valley. And so that density of intensity, the regulatory clarity, to me, those are the 2 pillars. The third I would add is speed. You cannot add any friction. The second you add friction to doing business, to growing your business, to me, as an innovation hub, you're dead, and you should not exist. We exist to operate at the speed of the companies we license and the companies we host, and the only way we can support their success is if we move at that speed or faster. The second we slow down, they slow down. And I always talk about, has anyone seen the movie Speed? Raise your hand if you've seen the movie Speed. Bit of an aside. Can you tell me what is the crux of that movie? Do you remember? Other than it made Keanu Reeves' career. I'll tell you, there's a bomb on the bus. And if the bus goes under 80 kilometers an hour, it blows up. People think this is an action movie. This is the greatest business movie ever made. Because it's the fundamental lesson we embrace at Innovation City as an innovation hub, which is the second you slow down, you're dead. In this sector, whether we're talking about fintech, digital assets, Web3, crypto, AI, you name it, speed is the killer app. Speed is how you win. Speed is how you beat the big incumbents. Speed it has to be at the core of everything you do. And so as an innovation hub, we have to embrace that.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, and I like that you made that example with that movie. Now, as digital assets like stable coins are slowly maturing, where do you see the most immediate real-world cases changing how capital moves across borders?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the dominance of the dollar and the SWIFT system makes it difficult for certain countries to move money, makes it difficult for certain investors to operate. Stablecoins obviously unlocks that, right? It's decentralized, it's global, there's no one owns the underlying systems. That's a big part of it. It's the accessibility of it globally, I think, is a game changer. The second part of it, obviously, is that the consistency of it, right? Because it's pegged to a currency, and recently, obviously, we have the digital dirham here in the UAE. The stability of it, the consistency of it, gives investors confidence to use it and allows you to do things like even my free zone, accepting payments in stablecoin is not something we would have done otherwise if these stablecoins did not exist, because we have stability and we have consistency and we have a certainty that we're going to get the money that we think we're getting. And so I think it's a confidence thing. I'm maybe in a minority that thinks stablecoins are kind of a boring topic. It's plumbing that you have to get right, but is not going to set the world on fire. It's plumbing. And plumbing is kind of boring to talk about, but you need it.
Right. Now, regulation is often seen as a constraint, yet some jurisdictions are pulling ahead. Talk to us about how innovation hubs work with regulators to enable speed, as you mentioned earlier, trust, and scale at the same time.
Yeah, this is always a tricky relationship with regulators. So Innovation City, as a free zone, is not a regulator. So we operate in unregulated areas. My thesis, my belief, is that the regulators today, in almost every country, I'm not going to say just in the UAE, have overreached. And there's good reason why they overreach. It's good for business. It's profitable. When you're the regulator and you decide and you can gatekeep what you want, you can charge people however much you want, you can make a lot of money. Now, I think regulators do great things. And I think anytime you have to protect the consumer, regulators are important, right? If I deposit money here or I send money there, I want a regulator sitting there making sure my money doesn't disappear and protecting me. That's important. But there's a lot of gray area today where I think free zones like mine have operated and have innovated to provide products to the market where a regulator is not necessary, where maybe today they're overreaching a little bit, but don't need to. And I think about things like, we were the first free zone to offer a proprietary trading license. You want to trade your own crypto? You want to trade your own dollars? There's no one at risk other than you. You don't need a regulator to do that. We have a product coming up that I think is going to set the world on fire, at least this part of the world, that will allow people to do something, a very hot part of the fintech and Web3 world today, that will not require a regulator, but where we've built a framework to still protect the stakeholders and the actors within those transactions. So I think it's a little bit of a tenuous relationship between innovation hubs, because innovation hubs want to unleash innovation, want to set people free, want to reduce friction. Regulators are a source of friction. I think they're a necessary source when people, a consumer, an end user's dollar is at risk, and everything outside of that, they're probably overreaching.
Right, now let's look ahead. Tell us more about what capabilities that founders, investors, and governments get right today that remain relevant in a world where financial infrastructure is increasingly programmable and decentralized.
Yeah, I hate to be like, I'm sure 100 people on this stage today have talked about AI and the disruptive effect of AI. I hate to be the 101th guy talking about it. I just think we're massively underestimating the disruption that will happen, even in financial markets, caused by AI. Like the amount of volume, trading, moving of money, payments, all of these things that will be done with zero human intervention, literally just machine to machine, I think is going to catch a lot of people by surprise and disrupt a lot of industries. And I don't think the systems yet are built for that, and I don't think the human capital is being trained for that new reality. And so I see massive, massive disruption coming, greater than most people think. I'm one of these people that, you have the ones going, the sky is falling, we're all going to lose our jobs, AI is going to replace all of us. I'm not there. Maybe I'm not that far, but I'm pretty close to that. Yeah. And so where is safe haven in those situations? It's making sure you're understanding what disruption is going to happen and building around that, right? Building for that future. One thing, as someone who's been in technology for 25 years and building technology companies for 25 years, one thing I've learned is no matter how much you may disagree with an outcome, you cannot stop that outcome from happening, right? You may think social media is a net negative for society. You may have thought when Facebook came out, this is horrible, I'm not going to use it. Just because you think it shouldn't exist never stops it from existing. And so we may not like a reality, a world where, all of the financial rails, financial systems, infrastructure is machine to machine, no human intervention, AI to AI, AI making investment decisions, AI making payment decisions, like all these things with no humans even looking at it. You may not like that reality. That reality is coming whether you like it or not. And so my message is always deal with the reality, not with the utopia in your own mind.
Right. You spoke about building on it and deal with the reality. What advice then would you give to our leaders here in the audience regarding that?
Yeah, one other maybe insight from my career for whatever it's worth, and it's probably not worth that much, but what is hot today, everyone's talking about stable coins and AI and like all these things that are hot today and you hear 100 times in a conference. I can guarantee you, I can promise you, I will bet every penny of my net worth, I will bet anyone in this room, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, no one's even talking about it. No one cares. And so the advice I always have is, whatever you think is the hot thing today is never the thing you're necessarily going to make your whole career out of. The beauty of tech is it's always moving. There's always something new, right? 5 years from now, we may all be on stage here talking about how quantum computing is making banking impossible because no one can keep any account secure. I don't know, right? Like the whole crypto market has collapsed because quantum has broken all the cryptography. I don't know. The point is, I don't know, so probably you don't know. But the attitude and the open mind towards what's next, what could be disruptive next, what's coming around the corner, to me, that's the advice I always give, because there is always something around the corner that's interesting and new. And the more you're on top of it, the more you're ahead of it, the more you embrace it, the faster you embrace it, the more rewards you will reap long term. And I think that's kind of the exciting part and the scary part of this industry we operate in.
Right, so what I'm taking from this is that the future of financial movement is not just about faster transactions, but about infrastructure and collaboration. Would you agree with that?
And about the humans. We still cannot take the humans out of the equation, no matter how much we might replace humans doing the work.
Hence collaboration.
There's still human behavior, human attitudes, human personalities.
Right.
Humans still are going to meet and talk and do business together. You can never forget that part of it. That human infrastructure has to change as fast as the technology. If it's slower than the technology will never get adopted.
Absolutely. Now, unfortunately, we don't have much time, Paul, but thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, and thank you to our audience for joining us for this incredible discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.